When my best friend Rebecca found out I wanted a divorce, she exploded with rage, cursing my husband Joseph for being shameless enough to cheat on me. That he didn't cheat, I said quietly. Rebecca stared at me stunned. Then why the hell are you divorcing him? Are you out of your mind? I let out a bitter laugh. Yeah, I guess I am. I've been out of my mind for way too many years. Joseph texted me, asking me to bring him the documents he needed for a meeting today. Before I even reached his office, I could hear laughter spilling out from inside. What does Marilyn even do all day since she doesn't work? That voice, it was his secretary Victoria. Shopping, buying clothes, going to the salon, I guess. Joseph said, So much free time? Why don't you have her help you at the office? Victoria asked. Forget it. He doesn't know anything. She'd just get in the way. Victoria laughed, then sighed with a hint of envy. Marilyn's so lucky she doesn't have to lift a finger and still has everything. Unlike me, I have to fight for every little thing on my own. Joseph chuckled softly. Sounds like we're in the same boat. Everything I have, I earned myself too. I stood there for a moment, silent, then turned around, walked downstairs and left his folder at the front desk before heading out. Rebecca didn't quite get it after I told her. Are you serious, sis? You're divorcing Joseph because of that? I shook my head, unsure how to explain it to her. Maybe to others my marriage looked perfect and asking for a divorce made me seem dramatic, even unreasonable. That's nothing. I thought Joseph, the perfect husband, had cheated on you or something. No single snowflake causes an avalanche. Joseph and I grew up together. We were childhood friends, next-door neighbors. We were the same age, attended the same schools. I was always the top student. Joseph was second. After high school we went to the same college, even chose the same major. I always knew he liked me. When he finally confessed, I told him, if you can beat me and become the top of our class, I'll date you. And he did. So we got together. After afternoon tea with Rebecca, we were about to part ways when she gave me a worried look. Marilyn, don't be impulsive, okay? Divorce isn't something you do out of spite. Think it through. I waved goodbye with a smile. The moment I turned around, tears streamed down my face. I had thought it through. I'd thought it through 1,000 times. But it still hurt. When I got home, Joseph wasn't there. It didn't matter how late I came back, he was rarely home since his company had grown. The house was always empty. Joseph was allergic to fur, so we didn't even have a dog. I'd gotten used to the cold, hollow silence. Funny how I used to be terrified of being alone. My life had always been filled with friends, noise, people. But after marrying Joseph, my entire world revolved around him. I lost touch with most of my friends. And now, standing in this lifeless house, I couldn't help but mock myself. When did I become this version of me? Half asleep, I felt a cold body press against me. Before I could open my eyes, had already pulled half my clothes off and started kissing me. Stop. I'm tired. My rejection made Joseph pause for a second. Then he chuckled softly. Don't be like this. You're really upset just because Victoria teased you a little? That's just how she is, don't take it personally. That's when I realized Rebecca must have told him what I'd said over tea, probably with some helpful advice sprinkled in. Joseph's hands grew bolder, but I pushed him away forcefully. I said no. I'm tired. He rolled off me, clearly annoyed, his voice sharp with frustration. Seriously? You're making a big deal out of nothing. Victoria's just someone who had a crush on me back in college. It's ancient history, why can't you let it go? Yes, Victoria had chased after Joseph in college. We were all in the same year, though I barely knew her. I was the top student, the one everyone noticed. She was forgettable, a background character in the story of my life. I only knew her name because of Joseph. She'd pursued him loudly, shamelessly, for what felt like forever. When Joseph and I started dating, she even got drunk and screamed her heart out over the campus radio, making sure the whole school knew. It embarrassed me more than I cared to admit. Years later, after Joseph and I got married, I ran into her at a class reunion. She said she was married too, claimed her husband adored her. I had no idea when she'd wormed her way into Joseph's company. Back when Joseph first started his business, things were tough, really tough. His mother, Susanna, was sick and I was the one who took care of her. Joseph grew up in a single-parent home, which made his bond with her even tighter than most. To support him, I quit my job and looked after Susanna for nearly 3 years so Joseph could focus on building his company without worrying about home. As the company grew, Joseph held me in his arms one night and said, "Baby, I don't want you working. I don't want you dealing with bosses who don't appreciate you. I just want to come home every day and see you here waiting for me. That's my greatest happiness." So I stayed home. I became the perfect housewife, thinking we'd built something beautiful together. But now I wonder, was that really our happiness? Or just his? As Joseph's company thrived, he came home less and less. At first, he'd still try sending me texts explaining how busy he was, even picking out gifts himself to make up for it. But eventually the explanations stopped. Eventually coming home became the exception, not the rule. Now he only texts me if he's actually planning to be home for dinner. Our anniversaries used to be special, filled with surprises and personal touches. Now they're just another task on his secretary's to-do list. Every time I receive a thoughtful gift from his secretary wrapped perfectly with a card she probably picked out herself, I can't tell if I should feel grateful or just defeated. Sometimes it feels like I'm married to her, not him. When my brother Chris picked up the phone, he was silent for a long time. "Marilyn, are you really sure about this?" "Yes," I replied firmly. "I've made up my mind. If I keep living like this, I'm afraid I'll lose myself." Chris let out a deep sigh. "I watched you fall in love with Joseph, watched you marry him. I really thought he was someone I could trust, but I guess he's let you down. If this is what you truly want, then I'll support your decision." I thanked him sincerely. He promised to help explain things to our parents, giving me space to prepare myself. I felt incredibly lucky to have a brother like Chris. Had started his own company overseas years ago, and now that he was expanding into the domestic market, he offered me a job. He laughed and said, "Marilyn, you're smart. It'll feel much better leaving the domestic operations in your hands. Just give it your best shot, I know you've got this." After I hung up for the first time in a long while, I felt a flicker of hope for the future. Joseph still thought I was just throwing a tantrum. He had his secretary buy me piles of gifts I didn't even like, hoping to win me over. I stared at the meaningless presents cluttering the living room, feeling nothing but exhaustion. I didn't even have the energy to explain anymore. Chris' new branch was still in its early stages and I hadn't worked in years. Stepping into the role of branch president was bound to stir resentment, especially among Chris' longtime employees. The office politics were already complicated and I'd been busy preparing for the challenges ahead. Maybe it was because I hadn't been doting on Joseph like I used to, but today he came home unusually early. "What are you reading?" he asked, eyeing the documents Chris had sent me. Without looking up, I replied flatly, "A book on business management." "Business management?" Joseph chuckled mockingly and picked up the notebook where I'd jotted down some notes. "Wow, you're really trying. But come on, isn't this a bit much?" I ignored him, focusing on my work, but he didn't take the hint. Completely oblivious, he continued, "My company's already doing great. We have more than enough money. Why not just relax and enjoy being a rich man's wife?" I closed my book slowly, looked up and met his eyes. "That's not enough. If I don't know anything, it'll just be a burden." His expression darkened with impatience. "You're still mad? Seriously, Marilyn, when did you become so petty?" I stood up, stretching casually. "I just want to go back to work." "Why are you so against it?" "Because women belong at home managing the household. Making money is a man's job." I stared at him quietly, wondering how the man I once thought was so brilliant could say something so small-minded. And besides, wasn't Victoria a woman? She seemed to be thriving just fine in her career. Why was it okay for her but not for me? Realizing his words didn't land well, Joseph softened his tone, switching to his usual charm. "Marilyn, you're my wife. You know how much I love you. The world out there is harsh. I can't bear the thought of you getting hurt. Just stay home with me, okay? Let's live a peaceful, comfortable life together." I lowered my gaze, saying nothing. I knew the truth. Joseph's sweet words were nothing more than a velvet cage. His love just another way to keep me trapped. Chris' new branch was progressing rapidly, and before the official launch he called a meeting with the entire team. When he announced in front of everyone that I would be the branch director, the room stirred with murmurs and side glances. One voice stood out. Dennis, one of Chris' longtime subordinates, had been with Chris since the early days of the company, and by seniority alone, that position should have been his. His dissatisfaction was thinly veiled behind a polite smile. "Apologies if I'm being blunt, Mrs. Spencer," he began, his tone dripping with faux civility. "But you've been a housewife, haven't you? No offense, but how exactly does someone with virtually no work experience qualify to run a company?" Chris shot me a worried glance, but I smiled calmly and addressed Dennis with measured politeness. "We haven't even started working yet, and you're already questioning my capabilities. Isn't that a bit premature? If you truly doubt me, then wait until we're in the thick of it. Challenge me with facts, not assumptions built on thin air. Some people still looked unconvinced, shifting uncomfortably in their seats. So I continued that I know some of you think I'm only here because of Chris, and I understand why that might bother you. But all I ask is a chance to prove myself. I'm confident that, in time, I'll earn your respect. After the meeting, Chris laughed, saying he hadn't seen me that poised and confident in years. He was proud of me. That I gave an awkward chuckle. Chris, honestly, I was terrified. My hands were shaking the whole time. But I couldn't back down. It's just like in relationships, once you start compromising, once you start shrinking yourself to fit someone else's expectations, you'll eventually lose everything. Having said that out loud, I knew I had to live up to my words. There was no turning back. So I buried myself in late-night study sessions, determined to prove not just to them but to myself that I was capable. Eventually Joseph had enough. Marilyn, how long are you going to keep up this nonsense? You'll never get into my company. No matter how hard you try, it's pointless. And just like that, it was clear Joseph had never believed in me. Not even a little. That I don't want to work for your company, I replied coolly. I can find my own job. For a brief moment he seemed relieved, like I'd finally snapped out of some ridiculous daydream. Sweetheart, he said, softening his voice like he was doing me a favor, you're just a housewife. No company is going to hire you. Marilyn, no one sees the effort you're putting in. That's just reality. I shrugged, unfazed. Well, how can anyone know for sure if I don't at least try? Lately, Dennis had been in a foul mood. Word around the office was that he'd been negotiating with a new client for weeks, only to be ghosted at the last minute. Frustrated, he muttered, people around here have zero integrity. I couldn't help but chime in, as long as a contract isn't signed, nothing's guaranteed. Dennis glared at me, then in a fit of annoyance, dumped the client's entire file on my desk. That if you can land this client, I'll dance for you. Naked. Challenge accepted. I combed through the client's details, analyzing every angle. It didn't seem like she'd backed out on a whim. There had to be a reason. So I reached out to her. After several conversations she finally opened up. To be honest, she said, I've always sourced from Foxfire Group. Your prices are better, sure, but I'm worried. If your products don't meet expectations, Foxfire will find out and jack up their rates. Her concerns were valid. But I wasn't about to give up. How about this, I suggested. Place a small order with us first. Test the waters. If you're satisfied, we'd love to work with you again. She looked surprised. Really? But isn't your company's policy to offer these rates only for bulk orders? I nodded. Consider it an exception. When Dennis found out, he was furious. That's cheating, he snapped. You lowered the company's value just to snag a stingy client. What's even the point? I stayed calm. How do you know she won't place larger orders in the future? The key is understanding the client's real concerns. That's how you build lasting partnerships. Sure enough, not only did she sign the initial contract, but a month later, she came back with a long-term deal. Dennis' face was priceless, like he'd swallowed something bitter. But true to his word, he performed his promised dance during lunch. I didn't make him do it naked, though. His physique was surprisingly decent, and I wasn't sure I could handle that much enthusiasm. Our female colleagues, however, thoroughly enjoyed the show. I couldn't resist teasing him afterward. Dennis, you've got real talent. Ever consider a career change? From that day on, his attitude toward me shifted. At the very least, he stopped looking at me like I was an imposter in a suit. We were prepping for a charity gala when Dennis casually asked, You going? I chuckled. Wouldn't it be weird if I went with you? He adjusted his cufflinks, frowning slightly. Why would it be weird? You're my colleague. It's just a work event. Don't overthink it. I rolled my eyes. Relax. I'm a married woman. Overthinking isn't even on the table. As fate would have it, I did end up going with him. His date got sick last minute. I in the car, I stole a quick glance at him. I hate to admit it, but his side profile was kind of attractive. Without warning, Dennis turned to me. Oh, are you divorced yet? I didn't respond. Undeterred, he continued, Are you planning to? When's it happening? Where are you in the process? I snapped my head toward him. Dennis. I cut him off sharply. Mind your own business. Especially when it's my business. For once, Dennis didn't snap back with one of his usual sarcastic remarks. Instead, he clenched his jaw, clearly frustrated, but kept his mouth shut. His eyes, however, kept drifting toward me when he thought I wasn't looking. The charity gala was packed with representatives from major corporations and up-and-coming businesses. Everyone knew this was more than just an event. It was a golden opportunity to boost visibility and make powerful connections. From across the room I spotted Joseph. Standing right beside him like she owned the place, was none other than Victoria. People gathered around them, oblivious to who I was, showering them with praise. Mr. Spencer, your career is soaring. And Mrs. Spencer is absolutely stunning. You two are the perfect match. Victoria basked in the compliments, swirling her wine with a smug smile. Joseph, hands casually tucked in his pockets, played along effortlessly. I wasn't here to make a scene, I was representing Chris Branch. So, I kept a low profile, avoiding them as much as possible. But fate has a twisted sense of humor. I ran into Victoria in the restroom. Marilyn, she sneered, her tone dripping with contempt. Don't you think you're overstepping? I lifted my gaze lazily, annoyance flickering in my eyes. Victoria? I don't recall doing anything to you. I turned to leave, but she wasn't done. She stormed after me, clearly itching for a confrontation. Marilyn, don't drag Joseph down with your nonsense. Do you have any idea how hard he's worked to get where he is? Don't cause trouble tonight. I stopped abruptly, turning to face her with a cold smile. Sweetheart, you're the only one here obsessing over Joseph. I have no intention of doing anything. Relax. Her jaw tightened, and for a second, I swore I could hear her teeth grinding. She grabbed my arm. As long as I'm around, I won't let you bother Joseph. Her little scene attracted attention. A small crowd gathered, among them Joseph. His eyes flickered with surprise when he saw me, but it quickly morphed into annoyance as his brows knitted together. Marilyn, isn't this a bit much? Following me here? Seriously? I let out a short, incredulous laugh. Joseph, for the love of God, stop flattering yourself. I was invited here just like everyone else. I'm busy, trust me, I don't have time to stalk you. Don't lie, he snapped. You're just here to spy on me, right? To see if I'm really working? Well, there you go. Satisfied? Now you can go home. I was about to fire back when a firm hand landed on my shoulder. Dennis. Marilyn, sneaking off to Slack again? We've got a ton of CEOs waiting to meet us. Let's go. His words hung in the air, thick with implication. Joseph and Victoria's faces were priceless, pure disbelief as they both looked me up and down as if trying to reconcile what they'd just heard. After a tense beat, Joseph broke the silence. Marilyn, you found a job already? I gave him a tight smile. Yep. Actually, I'm working right now. So if you'll excuse me, and with that, I walked away, leaving them both speechless in my wake. Back in the main hall, Joseph trailed behind me, but I didn't spare him a glance. I was too busy mingling, laughing, and engaging with business contacts. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed him stealing glances at me more often than not, his usual arrogance replaced by something unfamiliar. Curiosity? Jealousy? I didn't care enough to find out. By the time the gala finally wound down, the night stretching into the early hours, Joseph approached me. Marilyn, he said stiffly, you can take a cab home. I'll finish up here and head back later. I raised an eyebrow, amused. Funny, I've still got work to do too. I'm heading back to the office, I'll be home late. His expression darkened instantly. What kind of job makes you work this late? What are you even busy with? This is ridiculous. Before I could respond, Dennis pulled up, honking aggressively from the car. He leaned out the window with a grin. Mr. Spencer, are you done blocking the road? We've got places to be. Without waiting for a reply, he revved the engine and drove off, leaving Joseph standing there, fuming in our wake. I end the car. Dennis glanced over with a smirk. Marilyn, your taste in men is terrible. I didn't argue. How could I? He wasn't wrong. I just realized it far too late. Dennis wasn't done. Joseph's the type who looks good on the outside but is absolutely useless where it counts. A walking disappointment. I was too exhausted to engage, slumping against the seat. Yeah, I muttered. You're right. Apparently that little bit of agreement was all the encouragement Dennis needed. He launched into a fool-in monologue about how important it is to choose a kind, decent man. How the wrong choice could ruin your life, and on and on. Rolling my eyes, I pulled out my phone and texted Chris. Chris, your top employee Dennis is an absolute chatterbox. Send help. By the time I finally dragged myself home, it was well past 11 p.m. Joseph was waiting, slouched on the couch, his expression a mixture of irritation and something else I couldn't be bothered to decipher. Nice of you to remember where you live, he snapped. Too tired to argue, I yawned and waved him off. I've had a long day, Joseph. Save the drama. I turned to head for the shower. But he shot up from the couch and grabbed my arm roughly, his grip tightening. Marilyn, don't forget you're my wife. Don't think you can use work as an excuse to go around keeping men on the side. His words hit me like ice water. Without thinking, I slapped him hard. His head snapped to the side, the red mark of my palm already blooming on his cheek. I stared at him, disbelief and fury boiling in my chest. Joseph, working late with a male colleague equals an affair? Really? I spat. What about you? Parading around with Victoria, the woman who used to throw herself at you? You think that's pure? If anything's dirty, it's you too. Joseph's face darkened instantly, his eyes flashing with cold fury. Marilyn, there's nothing between Victoria and me. You'd better watch your attitude. This kind of behavior is dangerous. I let out a dry, bitter laugh. Dangerous? Joseph, I married you. I didn't sell myself to you. We're equals, not property. With that, I pushed past him and walked toward the guest room, leaving him seething behind me. You'll regret this, Marilyn. He shouted after me, his voice echoing through the empty hall. The next day, I had a meeting scheduled with Mr. Smith to discuss a contract. As soon as I stepped into the conference room, I nearly collided with a familiar face. Marilyn. What a coincidence, Victoria purred, standing there with that same smug, condescending smile, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. I frowned. She was dressed more like she was attending a cocktail party than a business meeting, tight dress, perfectly curled hair, and a heavy cloud of perfume so strong it made me want to sneeze. For a brief second, I actually felt sorry for Joseph. This was his company's idea of professionalism. Victoria strutted closer, her tone dripping with mock sympathy. You're just a washed-up housewife now, huh? Back in college you always overshadowed me. But look at us now, you're not winning this time. I didn't respond. Instead, I stepped aside, leaning against the wall, trying to escape the suffocating cloud of her perfume. Moments later, Mr. Smith's project manager, David, approached, his face lighting up with a grin as he spotted Victoria. Miss Victoria? What a pleasant surprise. It's always a pleasure to see you. I sighed quietly, closing my meticulously prepared contract folder. I might have been new to this side of the business world, but I wasn't naive. Just as I suspected, Victoria and David disappeared into a private room, leaving me waiting. They were gone for nearly an hour. When they finally emerged, Victoria's smug grin was practically carved into her face. David shot me a patronizing glance. Oh, you're Mrs. Spencer, huh? Business isn't a game. You know. Maybe don't cause trouble for Mr. Spencer next time. I said nothing. Instead, I returned to the office. You just walked away? Dennis gaped at me, eyes wide with disbelief. His dramatic reaction made me chuckle despite myself. Don't laugh. Are you serious right now? He circled around me like an over-caffeinated watchdog. You just stood there and let them talk down to you? What's wrong with you? You should have put them in their place. I barely registered his rant, busy texting on my phone. When I finally looked up, he was right in my face, his frustration written all over it. But then he froze, awkwardly clearing his throat and looking away. Well, whatever. We don't need shady business partners like that anyway. I patted his shoulder, amused. Don't worry, Dennis. I've already scheduled another meeting with Mr. Smith. His jaw dropped. Seriously? But isn't he booked out for months? I gave him a sly smile and a playful wink. I just texted him. We're meeting now. Dennis stood there stunned as I walked past. What he didn't know was that Mr. Smith's company was run by none other than Rebecca's fiancé. While Rebecca had been eager to help, her fiancé was a stickler for professionalism. It had taken every ounce of my determination, charm, and hard work to secure the deal on my own terms. When I returned to the office later, my colleagues cheered, genuinely happy for me. The satisfaction lingered even after I got home, a subtle smile still tugging at my lips. But it didn't last long. Marilyn, Joseph's voice cut through the air like a blade. Let me handle the Smith deal. His words weren't a suggestion, they were a command. Oh? And why is that? I replied coolly. His patience snapped, frustration seeping into his voice. Because you're just an employee and I'm your husband. You should be helping me. Marilyn, you've been getting a little too full of yourself lately. I crossed my arms, my smile fading. Oh. Your company couldn't secure the deal and now you're trying to steal my client. The words hit him like a slap. His face twisted in anger before he quickly masked it with faux tenderness. I know you're just doing this to spite Victoria, he said softly, stepping closer. But Marilyn, there's nothing between us. You know I've always loved you. I stared at him, my face expressionless. Enough, Joseph. Stop flattering yourself. Joseph stood there speechless. I pulled a divorce agreement from the drawer and placed it in front of him. Joseph, let's get a divorce. He stared at me in disbelief. His face contorted with frustration. Why are you making a big deal out of nothing? Don't you realize how a divorce will affect my company? My mother's health isn't good. Can she handle this? Why are you being so unreasonable? He kept shouting, venting all his anger as if that would change anything. I waited patiently until he was done, then looked him straight in the eye, disappointment weighing heavily in my chest. You know what's sad, Joseph? Everything you just said was about you. Your company. Your mother. Your image. Did it even cross your mind to be upset about us? About our marriage? I took a deep breath, my voice steady. Face it, Joseph, you stopped loving me a long time ago. Joseph refused to sign the divorce papers, but I didn't argue. I'd done my part. Whether he signed or not didn't matter. If it came to it, I'd file for divorce in court. I couldn't stay in that house anymore. I packed my things and moved out. Finding a new place on short notice wasn't easy, so I checked into a hotel near the office. It wasn't ideal, but it was temporary. It didn't take long for Dennis to notice something was off. You've been staying in a hotel, haven't you? He asked, narrowing his eyes with suspicion. I laughed, trying to deflect. What, have you been stalking me after work? He rolled his eyes dramatically. Oh, you're literally wearing hotel slippers. I glanced down. Sure enough, I'd been in such a rush that morning, I hadn't even noticed. No wonder I felt shorter all day. Dennis shook his head. Staying in a hotel isn't sustainable. Have you found a place yet? I shook my head. There's an apartment across from my building. It's close to the office and the rent's decent. If you're interested, I can ask around for you. His offer genuinely touched me. Living in a hotel was inconvenient and Rebecca's place was too far from work. Dennis' suggestion was exactly what I needed. After finalizing the lease, I went back to the house to collect the rest of my things. I purposely chose a weekday afternoon, hoping Joseph would be at work. But fate had other plans. The front door was slightly ajar when I arrived. From inside I heard a woman's voice. Joseph, I like you. I've never stopped liking you. It was Victoria. I stepped inside quietly, my heart pounding. There they were, Victoria's dress straps slipping off her shoulders as she clung to Joseph, who was wearing just a thin undershirt. I took a deep breath, pulled out my phone and snapped a photo. Evidence. Joseph was clearly drunk, slumped, his eyes glazed over. Victoria, on the other hand, saw me and smirked triumphantly, her arms tightening around him as if to say, look what I've got now. I'd always known deep down that something like this might happen. But knowing didn't make it hurt any less. My chest felt hollow, tears slipping down my face before I could stop them. This was the final nail in the coffin. The end of us. Later I sent Joseph the photo. It didn't take long before he called, practically begging to meet in person. When we met, his face was pale with panic. Marilyn, I swear I was drunk. I don't even remember what happened. I don't know what Victoria was doing. I kept my expression calm. I know. He didn't do anything, and it was true. I knew him well enough to recognize when he'd blacked out. That night he was clearly too drunk to be conscious of his actions. Relieved, he let out a shaky breath, thinking he'd dodged a bullet. But then I delivered the final blow. Now sign the divorce papers. Let's get this over with. If you don't, I'll make sure this photo finds its way into the right hands. You wouldn't want your company's reputation to suffer, would you? His face twisted with rage, veins bulging in his neck. Marilyn, this was your plan all along, wasn't it? You're using this to blackmail me. I stood up, my voice cold and sharp. Did I force you to pose for that picture? Well, you might not have slept with Victoria, but you sure as hell forgot you're a married man. And you know what? This kind of emotional betrayal is even more disgusting than cheating. Without another word, I turned and walked away, this time for good. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. The moment I held the divorce certificate in my hands, Joseph, still unable to let go, asked me to have one last meal together. I refused without hesitation, his pride bruised. He snapped, Marilyn, you've always been so damn self-righteous. In college I had to chase after you, and you wouldn't even give me a chance unless I became the top student. Why are you so obsessed with being strong? Why couldn't you just be like other women, gentle, dependent, and happy to rely on me? For a brief second, I had almost felt nostalgic about our marriage, thinking of the love we once shared. But hearing those words, it was like a slap in the face, a harsh reminder of how blind I'd been to who he truly was. Joseph, aren't you a little too greedy? I shot back, my voice sharp and steady. You wanted me to give up my career. And I did. But then you complained I was boring because I stayed home. When I wanted to work, you wanted me back in the house, playing your unpaid maid. Which is it, Joseph? What the hell did you actually want? All those years of devotion wasted on someone who never deserved it. As I turned to leave, I couldn't resist delivering one final blow. Oh, and Joseph, you really thought you earned that first place spot in college? Please. If I hadn't gone easy on you, you'd have been stuck as second place for the rest of your life. I didn't look back. But I could imagine the look on his face, stunned, humiliated, and utterly defeated. Lately, Dennis had been in an unusually good mood. He hummed cheerful tunes around the office, even treating everyone to coffee for no apparent reason. Curious, I pulled aside a colleague and whispered, "Did Dennis win the lottery or something?" They burst out laughing. "Marilyn, are you seriously this dense? He's happy because you're divorced." That caught me off guard. I started connecting the dots, a nagging feeling creeping in. Later I asked Chris about it, hoping for some clarity. Chris shook his head dramatically. "I'm genuinely concerned about your emotional intelligence. You seriously don't remember? Dennis went to the same university as you. You were his college crush. He's liked you for years." I was stunned. There was no denying Dennis was an incredible person, smart, charming, dependable. If I weren't fresh out of a broken, soul-crushing marriage, maybe I'd consider giving things a shot. But right now, the idea of falling into another relationship terrified me. Chris suggested I go abroad to the company's headquarters for advanced training. It was the perfect chance to clear my head and finally have that difficult conversation with my parents about the divorce. While Dennis was away on a business trip, I wrapped up my projects, sent a farewell email to the team, and boarded my flight. Seeing my parents again was both comforting and painful. "Marilyn," my mother said, her voice tight with emotion, "I know you must have been hurting in that marriage. But couldn't you have talked to us before making such a big decision?" I forced a smile and told them everything, every heartbreak, every disappointment. By the time I finished, my mom was wiping away tears, guilt written all over her face. "I always thought you were so capable, so strong. I guess I overlooked how much you needed support. I'm so sorry, sweetheart." My dad, on the other hand, was furious. "I am going back to teach that bastard a lesson, Dad. It's fine." I interrupted gently. I already told him everything that needed to be said. The best revenge is living well, right? Let's just leave it at that. At the headquarters, my colleagues were welcoming and my parents encouraged me to work closely with Chris, hoping we could rebuild as a family. One evening as I was leaving the office, I spotted Dennis standing across the street. He looked as if he'd been waiting for me, his usual easygoing expression replaced by something more intense. When I approached, he blurted out, "Marilyn, are you avoiding me?" I blinked, caught off guard. "Avoiding you?" "No. I sent an email to everyone before I left. Maybe you missed it while you were traveling." He seemed to relax a little, though his eyes still held a flicker of frustration. "Right, sorry. I guess I was just being impatient. Did I bother you?" I sighed softly. "Dennis, I'm really not ready to think about a new relationship." His face faltered for a second, but then he managed a small smile. "I get it. I know you won't say yes right away. But could you at least promise me something?" I raised an eyebrow. "Curious. When you're ready, when you feel like you can open your heart again, can you consider me first? I've waited this long. A few more years won't kill me." I smiled gently, not giving him an answer, but the warmth in my chest lingered long after we parted ways. 3 years later, after honing my skills and gaining experience, I returned to the branch office, finally earning the respect and acceptance of all my colleagues. They often remarked on how much I'd matured, both professionally and personally. To celebrate, I treated everyone to dinner. Afterward, Dennis casually asked, "So, where are you living now that you're back?" I chuckled. "I moved out of that apartment across from your place years ago. I'm sure it's been rented out long ago." Dennis nodded. "Yeah, it's rented. By me. Move back in, I've kept it waiting for you." Dennis had always been respectful, never crossing boundaries or making me uncomfortable. To be honest, my feelings toward him had shifted over time. There was definitely a ripple beneath the surface. But logic reminded me my career came first. Running into Joseph was something I hadn't anticipated. It happened at a business gala. Surprisingly, it was Victoria who caught my attention first. Gone was her old arrogance. She avoided eye contact, her presence shadowed by an air of discomfort. Curious, I discreetly asked around. Turns out Joseph had fired her long ago. Victoria had managed to charm her way into another company while using her usual tactics. The drama escalated when the CEO's wife stormed into the event, marched straight up to Victoria and slapped her across the face. "You homewrecker. You think you can steal my husband? It'll ruin you." The room buzzed with whispers. People gawking at the chaos. I slipped away quietly. Those kinds of spectacles didn't interest me. As I reached the entrance, Joseph appeared, clearly having witnessed the same scene. His expression shifted from shock to something softer, nostalgia, maybe even regret. "Marilyn," he whispered, his voice unusually tender. "How have you been?" His eyes held a flicker of pain, searching for something in me that no longer existed. That I smiled politely. "I've been great, Mr. Spencer. Thanks for asking." But he wasn't done. Dropping to a crouch, his voice grew desperate. "I am sorry, Marilyn. I was arrogant, selfish. The truth is I was afraid. Afraid you'd outgrow me, regret being with me. That's why I tried to control you, because deep down I knew you deserved better. Please, can't you give me another chance?" I kept my tone calm and professional. "I am afraid that's not possible. We're unlikely to cross paths often, but if we do, let's keep things strictly business. I hope you'll be able to maintain professionalism, Mr. Spencer." I turned to leave, but Joseph grabbed my arm, refusing to let go. That's when Dennis appeared, his fist connecting with Joseph's jaw in one swift, satisfying punch. "Don't ever touch her again," Dennis growled, his eyes blazing with fury. Joseph staggered back, his face pale, his pride bruised far worse than his jaw. "Marilyn, are you with him now?" I hesitated, searching for the right words to shut the door once and for all. Before I could respond, Dennis blurted, "Babe, say something already." I shot him a shocked glance, but I didn't correct him. Instead, I let him pull me away, leaving Joseph standing there, drowning in his own misery. Joseph tried to contact me a few more times, but eventually even his mother intervened, begging him to stop disrupting my life. That's when he finally gave up for good. My career flourished, but of course my family had other concerns. "Dennis is a great guy," my mom pressed. "What's holding you back? Just because you had one failed marriage doesn't mean you'll never find love again. Don't sell yourself short." Chris chimed in, "Seriously, Marilyn. He's been crazy about you for years. What's the worst that could happen?" I hated to admit it, but their words echoed in my heart. Dennis wasn't just a colleague or an old college acquaintance. He was someone who made me feel at ease, someone who challenged me just enough to keep things interesting, and someone who, despite his playful teasing, had been there for me through it all. One evening, without overthinking it, I finally said the words, "Dennis, let's give this a shot." His reaction was priceless, completely frozen, staring at me like I'd just confessed to being an alien. After a long pause, he turned around, rubbing at his eyes. "Wait, are you crying?" I asked, half amused, half touched. "You wouldn't understand," he sniffled dramatically. "These are tears of joy." Maybe I didn't understand, but when he reached for my hand, my heart felt light, like I'd just opened a door I didn't even realize was there. Will this relationship bloom? I hope so, but if it doesn't, that's okay too, because this time I'll never lose myself for love.
Marilyn has no idea how much I love her. She was my senior in college, the girl everyone knew, admired, and talked about. She wasn't just popular, she was brilliant, radiant, the kind of person who walked into a room and effortlessly stole the spotlight. That I liked her the moment I saw her, that I wanted to confess my feelings, but Joseph beat me to it. Not that it would have mattered. Even if I had confessed, she wouldn't have said yes. She liked people who challenged her, and Joseph played that role perfectly. She even let him win academically, choosing to come second in class just to give him the satisfaction of being her equal. Life's funny, though that be why some twist of fate, I ended up working for her brother. And when Chris decided to open a branch in our home country, I was the first to volunteer, not because of career ambitions, but because it meant I'd get to see her again. When I found out her marriage wasn't going well, I told myself to play it cool. The first time we met again, I acted skeptical of her, pretending to question her abilities. Truth was, I just wanted her to notice me. But over time, something incredible happened. She started to shine again, that same confident, dazzling Marilyn I'd admired in college. Working with her was pure joy. I'd find excuses to collaborate on projects, just to be near her, to hear her voice, to watch her mind in action. But she was still married. And as long as she was married, I couldn't cross that line. God, the day I overheard her telling Chris that I'm a chatterbox, I almost cried. Am I really that talkative? Maybe. But can you blame me? I just wanted to see her smile again, to hear her laugh, to remind her of the person she used to be. She doesn't know I rented not one, but 2 apartments from my friend, just so I could be close to her. Heck, I even sweet-talked my friend into lowering the rent, just so she'd move in without second-guessing it. 6 months later, she finally divorced Joseph. That I thought, this is it. My chance. But nope, she ran off to the headquarters abroad. Who the hell told her I liked her? I was devastated. But then I thought, screw it. She knows now. I'm done hiding that I poured my heart out, told her exactly how I felt. I chased her persistently, shamelessly. She didn't say yes right away, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to give up, and then she said yes. After all these years, she finally said yes. That I told myself I wouldn't cry. But I did. Not out of sadness, but because after years of loving her from afar, I was finally holding her hand, that I am going to love her with everything I've got forever.